I had the privilege of living next door to a retired Army major for a number of years. And I was never in the military. I've always had a great deal of respect for those who served. Next week, of course, is Memorial Day. It's not one of the 7 spectacular Sundays, but it's a very important day when we memorialize those who served and in many cases gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country. But I appreciate those people that do. I've always had great appreciation for all the branches of the military, and specifically for me, the Army. And so I made a move to live next door for many years to a retired Army major, and he made me appreciate so many intricacies of Army service that I otherwise would not have known anything about. But I want to talk to you just for a minute about that, because it's a launching pad for what I want to speak to you about just a little while. I always saw those advertisements, you know, Uncle Sam wants you in the Army. You know, you see little posters, and they, even on television, trying to get folks to consider Army as a career. And I saw them teaching personal responsibility and everyone owning up to doing the mature and proper thing for the good of all. But I learned by being the neighbor of a major in the Army that although that is true, that individual responsibility is taught, there were some things that were too important to leave to chance. Now, when you were going to go on a mission, for example, if I told you, all right, now some of you have military past. We got several veterans that attend church here. We're thankful for every one of you. So proud of you. But if I were to tell you, because many of you are not veterans, but if I told you we were going right now on a mission and we were going to need to pack our gear to go on a trip. So if you imagine that you've got a bag to pack, a backpack to pack, to go out on a mission, what are you going to put in that bag? What goes in that bag? Or what are you going to take with you on this trip? And so I'm just kind of curious. So now you're thinking about that question. What's the first thing that you want to put in there? Jeremiah, you be quiet. Everybody else, someone said clothes. I expected someone to say ammunition, a hand grenade maybe. You know. So, but Jeremiah did serve, and so he answered the question first before anybody else could, that the first thing that you want to take is water. You cannot go on a mission without every man in that mission having a sufficient amount of water. You can go without a lot of things into a mission, but you cannot go without water. And that's too important now to let, okay, so you're going to pack your own bag, right? So you can put in your own bullets. You won't forget bullets. You're going to take your own pack. You'll get everything that you need. But we can't run the risk of someone forgetting water. That's too important. So say if you've got 100 men going on a mission, and 99 of them remember their water, but one doesn't, then the whole operation is over because one man was not ready with his water. So it's too important to go without water. So what do? How do you make sure? You give that job to one person. One person is responsible to see that everyone has their water. One guy. And that way they do. All right, now, does that resonate? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because the whole trip is wasted if even one person forgets to bring his water. Now, there is a very well-known parable of Jesus pertaining to the return of the Lord that I want to draw your attention to this morning. If you look at the Gospel of Matthew with me. In the 25th chapter, Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says, the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Now 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. But the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. But while the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight a cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, no, lest there should not be enough for us and you, but go rather to those who sell and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. And afterward the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, assuredly I say to you, I do not know you. And then Jesus said, watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. Now, I want to break this parable down to you, but before I do, I can tell you that one of the greatest mistakes that a person can make in trying to get understanding about one of Jesus' parables is to try to get too much meaning out of every detail. In other words, when Jesus told a parable, he had one thing in mind. He had one purpose in sharing this parable. And the purpose was that everybody would see to it that he was ready for the coming of the Lord. That was the reason for this parable. I have read this parable, and I have talked to people about it, and I've had this feeling, and others have shared the same feeling, is why would not the 5 wise virgins have been kind enough to share some of their oil with the ones that were foolish and did not have oil in their lamp? And when you ask that question, you have done exactly what I said. You've tried to get too much out of every detail of this parable. Jesus told us what he was trying to draw an understanding from. And it was not because the wise were not kind-hearted or didn't have a vision for the lost or a burden for the unsaved. The fact is, each one could only be ready for himself or not be ready for himself. And that was the issue. The issue was not, you got to have a lot of oil. The issue was, you've got to be ready. That is what the parable was about. And so what we want to see is just exactly what Jesus was saying. And that was, first of all, that these 10, we assume the pictures. I've seen a lot of people illustrate this with drawings and paintings and so forth. And they always have ladies, 10 virgins, but it could have been men. We don't know really if they were ladies or if they were men. What we do know is they all 10 were virgins. They all 10 were pure. That was the meaning of that part of the parable. And Jesus was saying these 10 people were not alike. But the division was not who was holy or who was pure. The division was who was wise and who was foolish. So the question, as we make the application to our own lives today, is not, are we good, wholesome? Are we honorable? Are we a good citizen? The question is not, are we religious? The question is, are we wise or are we foolish? Because if we are wise, as the wise virgins were examples, we will have made preparation for that sudden return of Jesus. If we are foolish, although we may be all the other good things, that is, wholesome, community-minded, good neighbor, good parent, good family member. We might be good in every other respect, except we're foolish in that we have not made our preparation for the return of the Lord, and then we find ourselves in the category of the 5 who were foolish. 5 were wise. They were wise because they had made preparation. They had oil in their lamps. And 5 were foolish. And they were only foolish to the extent that they had brought lamps, but they brought no oil in their lamps. And this is so important that if it were possible, perhaps somebody, as they would have done in the army, one person would have been assigned to make sure that everybody had oil in their lamps. But that's not this parable. This parable is the story of the responsibility. And no one can get your oil but you. The only one that can see to it that you are ready is you. And so we perhaps take for granted our readiness based on whatever, how much we have attended church in the past, how many times we read the Bible or didn't, because we took our time slot on the 24-hour prayer network, assuming that these things somehow could be the badge of honor that would make us ready for the coming of the Lord. But there's only one thing that will make a lamp ready to burn, and that's oil. Whatever other preparation that you might make might be a good thing. You're going to have a wedding? Good. I'll go down and find the beauty shop and get my hair done. I'll go to the manicure, the nail people, and let them fix my nails. And I get all ready. I'll get a dress for the occasion. I'll get the right clothes to get ready for the wedding. And all those things are good, fine. But the only one thing that will make your lamp burn, and that's you've got to have oil. You can do everything else right, but if you don't get oil with your lamp, that lamp will not burn. And so these virgins were confronted with this issue. Now, they were all slumbering and sleeping. I don't even know if it's wrong that they slumbered and slept. Because we always talk about the coming of the Lord, stay awake, vigilant. Well, they had heard that the bridegroom was coming for some time, and at some point it did not work out that they stayed vigilant. They all began to slumber. So that's us, isn't it? We hear about these blood moons, and everybody gets awake for a while and then kind of drifts back to sleep. And then we hear about the year of Jubilee, 70 years. Everybody gets excited and awake for just a little while, and it kind of drifts back to sleep. And someone said, well, it's just hard to know everything about these signs that point to the coming of the Lord. I don't know if I would understand. A couple of years ago, and I still think that everything I'm talking about is significant. I think those blood moons were significant. I think we'll see that someday. I believe the Jubilee year is significant. I believe the appointment of the last pope was still historical. And I think it still plays a role in this final hour. I believe those things are all important. Someone said, I can't keep up on all of that. There's no way I can know all of that. There are people that absolutely spend every waking hour studying prophetical signs that point to the coming of the Lord, and yet they are not exhaustive on picking up everything. Someone said, I just can't know it all. That's the thing. You don't have to. You don't have to know every sign. You don't have to know every inclination that comes down the path that warns people to get ready. What you got to do is make sure there's oil in that lamp. Make sure that you're not simply going through the motions of churchdom, that you're not involved with Christendom, carrying around a lamp with no oil in it. If we're wise, we'll keep oil in our lamp. We will be vigilant that there is oil in our lamp. I have noticed something. I'm sure, I'm an outdoors. I guess I consider myself an outdoorsman. And I pay attention to things. And there's two great things that have taken place in wildlife in the state of Oklahoma in my lifetime that's glaring to me, but they may bypass you. And one of them has been the rise of the population of the white-tailed deer in the state of Oklahoma. Now, a lot of people, because they're not interested, they don't notice that. But I'm going to tell you something. From the time I was a little boy, when I first went hunting on my own, I've been better off like David, with a slingshot. When I insisted to go hunting out in the woods by myself, go squirrel hunting, my grandpa gave me a cap gun because it's the only thing that could be safe. They weren't worried about me going to the woods by myself, but they wouldn't let me take any kind of a gun. So I'm 6 years old, armed with a cap gun, going to chase squirrels through the woods. All my life I've been. But through those years, and I got my first squirrel rifle when I was 8 years old, and spent my whole life in the woods. But if I were to ever see a single deer track, one deer track clear, I would go find my dad and drag him out into the woods back to the place and say, "Look, a deer was here." And I mean, that was like finding a trophy hanging on your wall today, because there were no deer in this state. If you found a track, it was a great deal. But now, one of the greatest fears that they have in the western part of Oklahoma, the northern tier states, for the insurance company is that a deer is going to cause damage to your car because there's so many of them. They got too many of them. And that happened in one lifetime. The other thing is the prolific number of Canadian geese that have become resident in the state of Oklahoma. Now, when I was a little boy, we'd see ducks and mallards and so forth, and occasionally geese would fly over. Usually they were just flyovers. We'd hear them honking way in the sky in the night. And that's how we knew there really were geese. But now, golf courses, I saw up here at the Cedar Ridge Golf Course, they've put up silhouettes of wolves out on the greens because that's like a decoy. It's like a scarecrow to keep the geese from landing out there and tearing up the greens, and because there's so many of them. And so in the spring of the year, now this isn't used very much, but this is a change in the law in the last about 15 years. This was never allowed before. All goose hunting was done in the fall months as the geese were flying over to the south in the migration. But in the last 15 years, they've opened up a goose season in the spring. Now, the geese are still in the south that have flown down there. The season is for the geese that have stayed, because the numbers have become so huge of these geese that do not migrate, but they stay here year-round, and they have become destructive to public parks, and as I mentioned, golf courses and private property is being destroyed by these huge numbers of geese that stay here. Now, for when I was a boy and they hunted geese in the migration, you were allowed to shoot 5 geese. That was a limit. But now, in the spring season, you can shoot 12 geese a day. You can shoot more geese than they'll let you shoot doves. That you don't appreciate that. I'm just trying to give you I'm trying to tell you these geese are staying here. And I've never shot a goose. If you got a pet goose somewhere, he's safe with me. But I'm trying to tell you that these geese that should be flying over have quit flying over, and they just stay here. They should be flying south for the winter. When the summer comes, they should be migrating back north to nest and lay their eggs. But instead, they're staying right here all the time. And those migratory birds continue to fly over. They're cousins with these guys. They ought to be flying with them, but they don't. They go against their nature. They become lazy. They don't even realize that their nature has changed. If they had followed the instinct that would have been inborn in them, they would have flown. They would have migrated. But instead, they've stayed right here, and they become a nuisance. And I want to tell you that Christian people have done the same thing. They have become like those folks around them. Instead of following that call of the Spirit of God to fly and to soar and to make their migrations and go where the hand of God would lead them, instead, they have just settled down in a place where they're comfortable. And their numbers have become prolific. And it's not a matter that they ever intended to pour out their oil and give up their readiness. It's just a matter of they haven't been checking their vessel. And listen, when these signs have happened, and every time a sign happens with the coming of the Lord, everybody needs to check. But I noticed that there has been a continual trend since the end of last century, and maybe way beyond that. Because in a particular day, a man had convinced a huge number of followers that Jesus was coming on a particular day, and had a book to that end, and everybody was reading this book and getting all excited. Oh, when that day comes, Jesus is coming. And I saw this letter, and I could not believe it. I could not believe it. It was a letter from the author of this book. 88 Reasons Why Jesus Will Come in 1988. And this was only a few days before the date that he had named. And in this letter, he's telling whoever is supposed to get the letter, form letter, says, now, this day is only 14 days off. So we don't have much time to get this word out, get this book out to everybody that we can. So it's very important that you order as many books as you can give away. Get them as soon as you can. And so what I would suggest to you is put it on your credit card so you can buy as many, and I don't have to wait until your check clears the bank before I send them to you. And I thought, man, if you were sure that the Lord was coming on that day, why would you be sitting there worrying about whether that check was going to clear the bank? But that day came and went. And the next year came and went. And other signs have come and went. And so now year after year, and we hear about things, oh, the Lord's coming because of the Pope being appointed. As I said, I believe it's got a significance. But this Peter of Rome has been appointed as the Pope, and the blood moons, and the year of Jubilee for 1,000th year. I understand all those things, and I concur that they all have a significance. But when something happens, people say, well, check if the Lord's coming. Better look and see if he's coming. But the next time, well, he might be coming. And eventually it happens to where we're not even checking to see if there's oil in our lamp or not. Listen to this. I know people who got discouraged. You set a date, the Lord's coming, but he doesn't come. So you set another date, and he doesn't come. And you say, you know what, the next time someone sets a date, I'm not going to even be worried about it. No man knows the day or the hour. You can't know. And that's true. Did you hear what I said? Jesus had told his disciples, he said, no man knows the hour of my return. He said the angels don't know. In one place in the book of Mark, he even said, the Son of Man doesn't know. The Father's kept it in his own power. No man knows the day or the hour. So someone says, hey, there's a sign. You think the Lord's going to come? And you say, well, I don't know it. See, it doesn't really matter if that's the sign or not. Because it's not a matter you're going to change everything because the moons are red or whatever. What the situation is we need to make sure that there's oil in the lamp, whether the moons are red or not, whether this is a year of Jubilee or not. The continual call of the Holy Spirit to your heart is there oil in your lamp? The question is there oil? If the Lord were to come today, are you ready now? And the call of the Lord toward our readiness is not for us to, on peak occasions, start getting ready. Instead, the reason, and intentionally, the Lord has not told anybody when He's coming, is so that we don't all try to get ready on that day. Instead, we all stay ready every day. And that's what's wise. It's not wise to try to figure out how I'm going to get oil in my lamp at the last second. It's wise to make sure that there is always oil in your lamp. Now, you know what? There's a lot of figurative speech in what I'm saying today. And I know that people hate that. I hate it. I don't like people to talk to me in figures and pictures and symbolism that I can't fully understand or appreciate. And I hadn't come here today to bore you. Now, I came to bore the Sunday school class. When I told you all, I was intentionally boring. But I didn't come to bore you today with symbols that you cannot appreciate. I simply want to make this very clear to you. Here it is. Everybody is in some state of preparedness when it comes to the return of the Lord. Everyone here today is. Everyone on the planet Earth today is at some level of preparedness. They either have oil in their lamp or they do not. The wise will make sure that they have oil in their lamp. The stupid people will be putting names of bathrooms up crazy somewhere. That's the same people. The wise will have oil in their lamps. The unwise will not have oil in their lamps. And that's the situation. And the answer is for you, by the way, either you are ready today or you are not. You are not trying to be ready. You are not wishing that you should be ready. You are either ready or you are not. And I realize that question for some people is a difficult question, but let me try to make it clear for you. It's not ambiguous. Today in heaven, there is a book. There is a book that is written. And in that book, either your name is written in that book or it is not. If your name is written in that book, then you are ready. If your name is not written in that book, it does not matter what your good intentions have been. It does not matter what you have ever contributed to the good of humanity. Nothing is important except, is your name in that book or is it not? Is your name in that book? Are you ready? Because, and the reason this is urgent, folks, is regardless of what you hear, there is not a second chance. Not a second chance. When the Lord comes, right then, is your name there or is it not? You know what? Can I tell you something else? Now, I am looking for the Lord to come. I expect that the Lord is going to come in my lifetime. I expect He is coming soon. But I want to tell you that I don't know any more than you when He will be here. It may be this day, it may be this year, may not be. It may be a while yet. There may be grandchildren yet for me to hold before the rapture. I don't know. I don't know. I expect there will not be. I think He's coming anytime. But if He does not return in the next few minutes, if it's a few years, The fact is, we have got to maintain a state of readiness. And many people thought the Lord would come in their lifetime, and they have died. You know, this will not resonate with most of you here, but I know that Pastor Eccles can appreciate what I'm getting ready to say. I remember this event that we were in Denver, Colorado, at a general council, and a man there said something about going to vote for a different superintendent. And I said, you know, what I think about, maybe it's time for a new superintendent. And I said, man, you are barking up the wrong tree. I said, I am the self-appointed chairman of the Zimmerman to the Rapture campaign. I loved our superintendent so much. But, you know, he's in heaven now. If we'd have passed my resolution to keep him as our superintendent until the rapture, we'd have gone a long time without a superintendent. It never dawned on me one time that possibly he could die before the rapture of the church. But the day came when, for Thomas F. Zimmerman, for example, this is the day that matters. Did the Lord come that day? No. Except that was the day he entered eternity. So the rapture may happen today, but if it doesn't, every one of us may give an account before the rapture. And that's why it is so urgent that we all maintain a continuous state of readiness, continuously. And so, what does it mean to be ready? Well, Nicodemus was a leader of the Jewish religion. In fact, he was a member of the Sanhedrin court. He was one of the highest officials in all of the religion of the Jews. But he did not know the first thing about living forever. So if you say, you know, I don't even know if I'm ready for the rapture or not. I don't know if I'm ready for Jesus to come. I don't know if there's oil in my lamp or not. Don't feel bad about that. And Nicodemus was a high official in the land of Israel in religion, but he didn't know. He didn't know how to know if you're saved or not saved. And Jesus said to him, except a man is born again, he shall not see the kingdom of God. You know what? I would have to say, if you want to know if you're ready, first of all, ask yourself this question. Have I been born again? See, if you were born the first time, there's evidence of it, you know. You may not remember, but somebody probably has a birth certificate that indicates, yes, in fact, you were born. If you were born again, you'll know it. You say, well, how will I know? Listen. The King of the universe cannot move into your heart and you not know it. If your life has been changed by Jesus coming into your life, you know it. If you have asked Him to be the Lord of your life and you've committed yourself to following in His steps in everything, if you've done that, you know it. If you're born again, you know it. And if you say, well, I don't really know that, then you need to consider maybe I've tried to live a good life, but I need to be born again. I need to confess to Jesus that all my efforts for righteousness have all fallen short, and I need Him to forgive me of my sins and come into my life. I need to be born again. If you are ready, then the first prerequisite is you've got to be born again. And then Jesus said something to the disciples that I think it bears repeating for you right now. When He was talking about the end time, Jesus said to the disciples, watch and pray always, that you might be counted worthy to escape the day that will come upon, of tribulation that will come upon this entire world. And you know, if it was important for the disciples to watch and pray, then I feel like I've got to watch and pray too. I want to check on the oil in my lamp. Did you ever have this experience? I did not long ago. My sweet wife had planned for us to make a trip, and I said, I'm ready. Let's go. When you're ready, I'm ready. You just give the word. She called me and said, I'm coming home. We're going to leave. I said, when you get here, we're headed out the door. You just come on, and as soon as you show up, we're out of here. And so, sure enough, she came in, and we headed out, got in the car, put the key in the ignition, turned the key, and that gas gauge was sitting on empty. She said, I thought you were ready. I said, I am ready. The car's not ready. And if you are not keeping an eye on the time, how is it with God? Are you talking with Him? You know, He's written you a lot of information about getting to heaven. Have you been looking over that information? You know, the Word of God, the Bible, is not around to decorate coffee tables. It's around to give us clear instruction about our journey from here to there. Are you checking on that? Are you seeing how that works out? Talking to God, letting the Word of God speak to you. The point is here, do we have a relationship with the Lord? It's not a matter of a list of rules that I've decided to keep. It's a matter of this. I love Him because He first loved me. Are you ready? Are you ready? That's really the only question that comes to us from this parable. Is there oil in your lamp?